That's lovely. All right. Welcome to this evening's meeting of the Biddulph Town Council Planning Committee on Tuesday, the 18th of March. Welcome to anyone joining us at the YouTube channel. Before we start, let's read the official blurb. This meeting is being recorded and will be uploaded to the Biddulph Town Council YouTube page. The aim is that decision-making should be transparent and in the public domain, which will involve more of our community and local democracy. By being in this council chamber, you are consenting to being recorded for your image to be added to YouTube. The images and sound may be used for training purposes. Any views expressed are the speaker's own and do not necessarily reflect the view of Biddulph Town Council. Please view the guidance on recording in public meetings policy if you need more information. Thank you. So, moving on to the meeting. Item 69, apologies.
We think just Councillor Fletcher.
Councillor Jackson.
Just had a message that Charlie Smith will be running a bit late.
Okay, so apologies for
May not make planning.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Jackson. Okay, moving on. Declarations of interest. Does anybody have any disclosable pecuniary interests or dispensations to declare? Stunning silent means I would suggest not. Do we have any other interests to declare? Councillor Jones.
Yes, Chair. Just in the interest of full and frank disclosure, I was approached by the applicant for 2025-0066.
Yes.
I had a short conversation with her on the phone and basically didn't express support or anything for the development and just referred it to the process. I did that, but just so you know that's happened.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I was also approached by the lady as well. I never actually met her. She wasn't in when we went round and she spoke to John.
Yeah. Well, I met her. She rang me.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Any other interests? Okay. No, thank you very much for that. Okay. Moving on to minutes to approve the minutes of the planning committee held on the 11th of February 2025. These have been to town council. Therefore, they have been through there. Do we need to go through them? Yes, Councillor Proudlove.
Something upon the desk.
Okay.
Respect of application SMD 2025-007 Sports Club. Did pick this up with case officer. Sport England hasn't been consulted. They have now. As of a few weeks ago, they've got 21 days to respond. So response should be received any time, but the leisure and tourism team at SMDC hadn't been consulted either, and they were objecting to the application.
Right. So thank you for that additional information, and that will no doubt get fed into to the planning officers directly. We may see it later. I doubt it. Okay. Right. Thank you very much, Councillor Hawley.
Move them.
Okay. Thank you. Do I have a second for that?
Awesome.
Councillor Jones, can we show of hands if we're all happy to approve them, and I'll sign them. Thank you very much. Give me a moment while I initial these and walk amongst yourselves quietly, please. Today is the 18th. Right. Okay. Thank you, Chief Officer. Right, moving on. Item 72, standing agenda item to consider any proposed sites for local listing. Do we have any suggestions, proposals?
No, but I have been in touch with the new heritage officer, cultural heritage officer at District Council, and she and I are meeting on the 1st of April to discuss the process for local listings and to try and get to the bottom of whatever happened with ours that we sent in 3 or 4 years ago. So hopefully by the time the next meeting comes, I shall have a much fuller update for you.
Because this is a new officer then at the...
Yes, I think that's been the issue, really, capacity to deal with those. So a new officer at the district. So hopefully a positive report next time.
Thank you very much. Okay, does anyone else have anything to add on? Anything for local listing? Okay, we'll move on. Item 73, new planning applications. You will have received the summary comments on the 3 applications we have to consider today. So SMD 2025-0043. An applicant is Mr. Adrian Leake of 3 Highfield Place, Biddulph, Staffordshire. The proposed development is a single-storey extension and side single-storey extension. It is slightly more complicated than it sounds when you look at the details. There was no pre-application advice. Essentially, it's a ground floor extension to a linked semi-detached house. It's providing a new fourth bedroom on the front of the linked outbuilding, to the front, right up to the front of the building line, with a bay window to match the existing bay window. There's a further extension to the rear of the linked outbuilding, wrapping around the rear of the property, provide a study, an extended kitchen dining room. The extension doesn't extend to the semi-detached central boundary line, so it's stopping short of the boundary line, so I think what it should needs to do. There are no windows to the sides of the extensions, roof lights to the bedroom and the dining room extension to provide additional light. The existing outbuilding is to be converted into a corridor with a wardrobe accessed from the bedroom. This is the new bedroom at the front, and ensuite accessed from the corridor itself. The materials are, the walls are brick to match the existing, roof tiles to match the existing, windows UPVC to match the existing, and doors, rear sliding door to match the existing house design. There were no other additional statements on it. It's not in the green belt. It's not the household applications. The BNG isn't applicable. It comes under, I believe, 2 of the neighbourhood plan policies: design and DES2 public realm car parking and movement. I believe it complies with design because it's fairly standard. I think single pitch roof. The problem is the public realm car parking and movement. The highways have raised a conditional comment on it, requiring 3 identified parking spaces to comply with the SMTC parking standards for a 4-bedroomed property, and that would basically come into DES2 as well. The access to the back of the access is to the back of the property from Highfield Close. Highfield Place itself is a private road. It appears to be under the control of a retirement development. There are no allocated parking spaces identified. There's no data on the parking on there because of its private road. And Highways, as I've requested, proof of 3 allocated parking spaces within the rear garden and details of the materials to comply with their requirements, DC1 and T1. So on this, my recommendation I would propose that we recommend approval, but subject to it meeting the conditions that are set out by the Highways requirement, and also that it complies with DES2. Yes, Councillor Hawley.
And basically, strictly speaking, because there's things missing out of the plan, we should actually be recommending it for refusal.
I'm happy to do that. If that's what you think.
On the basis that there are certain things missing, i.e. the parking spaces, which obviously Highways have said are not there, which should be part of the plans if you're reducing the amount of parking. So that's one thing. And the other question I've got is, you've got down to refer to the Neighbourhood Plan Working Group. Yes. And the question I was asking was why? I couldn't really see any reason.
The logic there was that it's failing to comply with one of our neighbourhood plan policies. Therefore, we have an interest in ensuring that it does. Also, to refer it to the neighbourhood working group to effectively provide a sanity check on the decision-making process here. But thirdly, it's a delegated decision as well. So I'd like to see it's not going up to committee. And there's a question there, should we be discussing whether it should be called in if we think it needs to be refused on the grounds of lack of information or applying conditions?
Well, I mean, there's two ways of looking at it. We can either recommend it for refusal on those grounds, or you recommend that it basically can't go through until those conditions have been implemented and met. Either way. And if that is what we actually recommend and they do, I still can't see any point in it coming to the Neighbourhood Plan Working Group, because effectively what we are saying is you don't approve it unless that condition is met.
I put that as a yes in order that we could actually have the discussion here to see if you wanted it to, and if you didn't, stop. Where I was going with this myself was for approving it on subject to the conditions being met, in that we are seen as being enablers to the process rather than necessarily a block on the process. If the consensus is that we should refuse it, then I'm happy to go with that. So essentially, Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, I mean, we can't, I keep saying this, we can't recommend approval, we can't recommend refusal or approval, we can't do that. We're here to make comments. And the comment is, we have concerns about parking and access, and that's what we should be saying. And in its current form, we don't think it complies enough to be approved. That's all I would say. We can't, I don't think we can say we'd recommend approval if you do this, because they haven't said they're going to do this. You could say, you know, recommend approval if you're going to paint it blue. Okay, but they're not. So I don't think we need to not sort of go on the negative side of it. We need to say, this is what we've got. It doesn't comply. We're not happy with, and that's what we're not happy with. And that should be, in my view, should be the correct response, Chair.
Okay, right, thank you. Does that mean that you're seconding the proposal to refuse? Right, okay.
No, not to refuse, to say, we don't. Can't get us through, can I? We're here to make comments. That's all we're here.
We're in a different situation than we were prior to the neighbourhood plan being adopted and implemented, because now we have a legitimate concern regarding whether things go ahead or not, because we have a plan that is essentially ours that we're trying to get people to adhere to.
Well, with respect, Chair, we've always had that. We've always had that brief to raise our concerns, make comments. That's what we do. We make comments, or we have no comments.
So I'm not going to debate it any further here now, but okay, so I'm going to move it on. Councillor Yates, you had your hand up.
Yes, I was just looking at the plans with respect to the parking requirements and the fact that it has been elevated to a 4-bedroomed house. I put more weight to the concerns about the car parking more than the actual development itself, because these are link detached. And what they've effectively done, I'm very familiar with these type of houses scenarios, which I was brought up in. And they brought what was effectively the outhouses forward and actually converted them into a more modern use. I mean, in the back in the day, they were sort of coal yards and laundry yards, much as anything. So they brought it into use. I am surprised at how big the wraparound is and how that would change the character of them, so to speak. But that's not really the judgment. It's the 4th bedroom and it's the weight on the car parking, and that's my only and main concern, really.
It's the threshold that they've achieved by putting a 4th bedroom on. They've reached the threshold that says you now need to have this number of parking spaces.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what I think I'm hearing is that essentially we don't think it should be either approved or we obviously have got adverse comments, and therefore we're commenting that because it fails to comply with the parking requirements, we don't think it should be.
It basically doesn't comply effectively with the neighbourhood plan policy.
Okay.
Just saying we've got concern, but it doesn't comply with.
Fails to comply, and therefore it shouldn't be approved on that basis.
Yeah.
Are we all happy with that as an alternative proposal?
Yep.
Okay, right. Give a show of hands, please. Okay, so essentially it's going to go through as we don't think it should be approved because it doesn't comply.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on to SND 2025-066, which is Mr. K. Humphreys Builders, land adjacent to 310 New Street, Biddulph, Staffordshire. The proposed development is the erection of 2 detached dwellings with associated works. There was no pre-planning application advice. This is the one that councillors Jones and Hawley have been in contact with, either directly or secondly with the applicant, did you say? Or one of the members?
By one of the objectors.
One of the objectors. Okay, right. Not the applicant, the actual objectors. Right. Okay, thank you. Glad for that clarification.
I might have said applicant, Chair.
Yeah, yes, I think you did, which was what's thrown me off, but that's okay. Right, so.
Applicant, it's a neighbour.
Yeah. Okay, right. So the proposal is it's a demolition of two existing garage sheds and the erection of 2 4-bedroomed, 2-storey detached houses on the land between existing stone properties, estimated about 1800s, some point, possibly earlier. Parking for 6 vehicles, partial removal of the existing stone wall to allow access for 2 private driveways to parking and turning areas at the rear of properties. The materials will be, it says Tobermory Country Stone, which looks like a facing rather than actually being stone built, but it looks like stone with grey roof tiles. There's no details of the windows or door materials on the application or on the plan submitted. No design access statements. The supporting statements, okay. Oh, okay. It caught me unawares. The planning statement refers to both SMDC local plan and to the Biddulph Neighbourhood Plan. It quotes a range of different references: SS1, SS3, SS10, H1, DC1, NE1, T1 from the local plan, and how to DES1 and DES2 from the neighbourhood plan. It argues that the development is limited infill in a village, which is
Nice,
that's an appropriate point to remind everybody else that, please, if you haven't silenced your phone or turned your phone off, can you please do so?
Point of information, at the county, when that happens, there has to be a donation to the chair's charity.
I think discuss that on your return, Councillor Redford. Okay, bit of left there, but so the argument is that because it's limited infill in a village, it is therefore appropriate green belt. It is in the green belt. There is BNG applicable, and a report was included suggesting greater than 10% gain in biodiversity. It notes that there have been 2 previous rejected applications as inappropriate development in the green belt under previous planning rules, but argues that the planning policy context has changed. It acknowledges the conflict with H1, SS10 and how to, but it's invoking the tilted balance because we're not up to our numbers. To put it in context, it's a 23-metre gap between two two-storey existing houses with no facing windows to either of the properties. They're quoting economic benefits to local traders along with a sustainable location close to the village centre in that you can walk to catch the bus, which is provided historically by the Biddulph Town Council. Just get that one in there. Right, so in terms of, I believe it complies with NE2 urban edge. I have issues with it complying with housing, which I'll come to in a minute. It does technically count as infill housing. It's 2 properties within a gap. It does state that it does have sustainable drainage, apparently looking at the details, and the design looks perfectly satisfactory. And I have concerns about DES2. So the NE2, which is the urban edge, it's modifying the existing boundary wall. So most of the boundary wall is being retained. So I think that is compliant. It doesn't, however, under How 1 meet the welcomed housing criteria. It could, if it was a high environmental performance property, which I think the previous properties that were developed in Biddulph Moor in a similar situation were in terms of solar panels and air source heat pumps. So if it was to include that sort of facility, it would probably then qualify under How 1. How 2, it looks fine in terms of infill housing. For Inf 2, the sustainable drainage, it's porous drives with soakaway drains, which are fairly high up the preferred classifications. And it does appear they're doing their best to match the existing properties in terms of the stone appearance and traditional appearance to match the detached and semi-detached properties along that frontage. DES 2 is the big issue in terms of while there's adequate parking, there are highways issues. Highways have raised the issue with the splay, visibility splays for the ingress and egress from the properties. We have 3 residents' objections raising similar concerns in terms of overdevelopment, parking issues, habitat loss, out of character, overlooking and loss of amenity, and also a lack of communication. The statement was that the appropriate notices hadn't been posted, saying that there was going to be a planning application in. Highways approval is conditional. Other consultancies, AES, are okay. United Utilities are specifying information on building over mains, which suggests there may be issues there. Sustainable drainage and water efficiency. The highways conditions are regarding the turning and parking areas, the surfacing, the visibility displays, sustainable drainage and levels to the road. And therefore, if we were to recommend approval in terms of, particularly with the, if it was to meet the high environmental performance standards that we would aspire to in similar properties, then we would want to, I suggest, ensure that the high waste conditions were met. Now, I've got Councillor Jones and Councillor Hawley. So Councillor Jones, you had your hand up first.
Yeah, just quickly, Chair, I support what you said about the sustainable heating system. In fact, I think that should be mandatory on all new builds now, right, frankly.
That the planning regulations specify.
I mean, I really should, and I think I'd be surprised if it's not, because the new ones that the builder built on Woodhouse Lane have all got that. So I'd be surprised if that's not. But I don't think that would be an issue to have that as a condition. I do have some issues. I agree with what Highways are saying. That piece of road, as you know, is very heavily parked.
Yes.
I mean, there's no gaps. So I think
To be if this,
there will have to
let me
be
go there.
gaps, obviously. But whether I think even if they had massive splays, there'd still going to be a cause length to get in it. I think that's what's going to happen. So there is that to consider. So I think if we highlight those, and obviously the fact that it is green belt.
Yes.
But I suspect that will be overcome with the new planning regime and so on. So yeah, those will be my comments, which is pretty much what you said yourself, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
I don't really have any issues with it.
Okay. Councillor Hawley.
Yeah, I mean, as you stated, it is actually on green belt. So we need to ensure that that green belt is not compromised. Now, the three that he built on Woodhouse Lane, basically they were on green belt.
We're also on green.
And they were refused on the grounds it was inappropriate development on green belt, but he went to appeal and he won.
Yeah.
And I would imagine on a similar situation, he would win again.
Absolutely.
So that is one thing, but I mean, green belt is one issue. The other one is that in their statement, they actually say there are no windows on the side of the house, which is number 318. And there are windows on the side of 318, which actually face the new build. So I think
That wasn't that. I'll be honest. I looked on Google Maps. I didn't walk down to have a look myself. And there must be slightly towards the back.
and there are windows actually on that side of the house. Now there's quite a substantial path for 318.
Plans and elevation.
And also then you're going to, when you look at the size of the houses, that the driveways are basically going to be sort of in excess of 4 metres wide. So there's quite a gap between 318 and the new house, the new houses. So the one thing that really needs to be considered is whether the 45-degree rule is actually compromised. Because if you look at 318 and you see the bit where it goes in, the window is just there.
Ah, right. Okay. Where you can't see it from the road.
So potentially, and there's also a door with a window on that wall as well. So one of the questions that's obviously got to be asked is the house that's being built going to compromise the light into that window? So that needs to be checked.
Yes, that's a very interesting point. I was under the impression that the wall of the new house was going to have no windows on the side, but actually it does.
The windows on the new house
Yeah.
that are on that side are both bathroom windows, and I would imagine would both be frosted glass.
Be opaque, yeah.
So that basically I can't see that there would be any overlook from that point of view. So, but the issue of the window, that needs to be actually checked out. So
45
side of it.
Road, yes. You'd like to put that as another.
As Councillor Jones has said, the highways conditions, I mean, there is sufficient parking for the size of the houses, but the exit from the driveways is of concern, because obviously all the way along there, potentially there's no double yellow lines or anything. You begin in the situation where there'll be cars parked. So the exit from those driveways could be a major issue. Highways have put various conditions in.
Yep.
If those conditions meet and solve the problem, then fine. But they should actually be made sure that those conditions actually, if it is approved, are actually imposed and made sure that it works. There is concerns about it being an overdevelopment, but actually the houses themselves are not potentially that much bigger than what's already there. So Overdevelopment is not, to my mind, a major issue. If you have a look at the pictures with the houses.
They blended on the street scene quite well.
I mean, 310, which is the house at the end, is actually, that is detached.
Yes.
So, you know, it is not that bad. But as I say, it is a situation where, as far as I can see, if it is going to be passed, the main thing has got to be, A, does it contravene Greenbelt? If it doesn't, then there's a load of conditions that need to be actually imposed, which effectively all covered the 45-degree rule, the highways conditions, the other the things in terms of solar panels and
The efficiency improvement.
all that sort of thing all needs to be included. So it's not cut and dried by a long shot.
Okay, thank you. I've got Councillor Yates and then Councillor Proudlove. Did you want to come back again as well?
Very quickly, yeah.
Councillor Yates.
Yeah, I'm just surprised in a way when somebody does a development which is going to have a degree of contentiousness. Because it's within a village setting, it's within a very well established. I mean, this is not a conservation area, is it?
It's simply Greenbelt between. I'm in the village.
I'm surprised that they didn't go for pre-planning advice, you know, and then that allows them to sort of look at some of the considerations and things. However, I don't think it'll be rejected if he was refused at Staffordshire Moorlands and went to appeal, because Greenbelt expresses a degree of openness, and because it's an infill site, and I think that is a little bit tenuous to hope that would happen. I was trying to look up the stone to see how well it matched, because you know it is a wonderful aspect of the bunch of cottages leading to the outside of the village. So to be a it looks like a breeze block wall to me, to be perfectly honest.
Having said that, there are a number of properties further into the village that I think actually have been built with concrete block work anyway. Extensions in the past, but that's.
And I think, I mean, that's expensive material. I would think facing just the front wall with, sandstone, which there's plenty of it around, would actually overcome that. And I should think that's the kind of thing which would have been discussed at pre-planning advice and whatever. I do get concerns about the car parking, but highways seem to say, do this before it's occupied, do this before it's occupied, do this. And I'm sure they will do that, which includes sustainable drainage and things. That will never negate the fact that when a car is coming out, assuming that they can always be bothered to do the 3-point turn in the back garden, they'll be coming out between two parked cars with limited view. But highways won't take account of that as such. They're hard, but that isn't a planning consideration which they would take account of, really.
They would.
They would, no, because it's the hard infrastructure which is put in, which is the visibility displays, the width of the driveway, the drop curb. So I do understand if somebody's lived there for decades and all of a sudden somebody's plonking a house next door, I'd be pretty upset, to be perfectly honest, but that isn't obviously a planning reason. I think you made a valid point about the window. I think the other side, I believe the window was in 310, and because the width of their driveway is maintained, which you can see that might well fit the criteria. Which
that, I think, is what they've got to ask in 318, actually, is basically that.
I can't see a window on 318. We've just really studied 318. Got this one window.
Yeah. It's further back when it steps back, I think, obviously. Right, okay. Thank you. So were you actually suggesting adding any other additional conditions onto it there, or simply?
It's just the observation about the fact that I think on such a sensitive development, which it will be, I would implore that any developer goes for pre-planning advice and make sure that is included in the design statement of what they've effectively analysed and considered.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Proudlove.
I just thanks, Chair. Caution comment on the Greenbelt. Policy does allow for limited infill in the Greenbelt, and that would be limited infill. And the point Dave makes about overdevelopment.
No, this isn't overdeveloped. No,
Houses.
but that is one of the objections.
Yeah, if we're crying overdevelopment, I know it's not us crying, but if we're crying overdevelopment of something as small as that,
I think, as I say,
I wonder why the district council's got no housing land supply.
That's it. I think, and they are invoking that. There's obviously the context that it has had two previous applications, but under previous planning regulations, and they were both refused. But I think the context has changed.
Previous
In a
planning policy, there was still an allowance for limited infill in the green belt.
Okay.
I would argue those decisions are wrong.
Well, that's to pass. Right. Councillor Jones, you wanted to come back?
Just quickly, Chair, I'll just, Nadia, Councillor Yates made a comment about the stone and maybe using sandstone to do the front. I think whatever stone you use, it ain't going to match the neighbours because they've got 150 years of soot all over.
Yeah.
Sandstone will probably stand out more glaringly than what they've proposed because that looks like it's dirty. And I've seen it in colour. That would probably match better than if you use local stone. It would stick out like a sore thumb. That's just the parking as well. It's perverse, isn't it? That none of the other houses in that road and on that stretch of the road have got any off-road parking at all. I think one might have, or two of them might have. Most of them haven't got any off-street parking, which is why it's so heavily parked on the road.
Yeah.
So it's perverse that if it matched exactly what was there, it would get rejected because it's got no off-street parking. But it has got off-street parking.
Such are the ironies of the planning regulations.
But I agree, and I think whatever the splays, if they comply with splays, if they don't even have a boundary wall, if they take the complete boundary wall out and a concrete all across the front of it, the park all the way across the front, it's still only have a length of one car to get out, and it's very tight across.
I think
It's going to cause problems, but there are one or two properties, particularly a little bit further along, going towards Knipersley on the left, where the parking there is disgraceful, and they still manage to get in and out. So I think that it's one of them have to suck it and say, I think it's a valid reason to sort of flag it for rejection. But I think, the legitimate issues, what's been said, is the green belt and the highways issues are the main two, I think. And Dave makes a good point about the 45-degree rule. Although I have to say, looking at the plan there, I suspect it won't be a problem because that kitchen window is not right in the corner. It's a little bit further along.
Yeah.
But it's something that needs to be checked.
so. Essentially, I think from the general consensus is that if it was refused, it's likely to be approved at appeal from past history. So perhaps we should try and ensure that it matches as best as possible with all applying a whole series of conditions. Again, I've put this down as a yes to refer, essentially because, again, it's a delegated decision, and I feel because there are a significant number of conditions that we would want to see applied, then we should have that. We should be called into the district council planning, also in order that the objectors do have an opportunity to present any cases.
I don't have any problem with this one being referred to the neighbourhood working group at all.
Okay, so essentially what we've got there is applying it, effectively approving it with conditions, or recommending that it can be approved subject to conditions being met. And that would be the highways conditions, the 45-degree rule, and environmental performance improvements, in order that, because I say in How 1, the types of housing that are welcomed are first home, self-build housing, innovative design, and high environmental performance. And that's the one that you get it in on as to get around the Greenbelt application process. Yes, Councillor Jones.
Chair, we need to make sure, given the concern, and it is concerning to residents quite a lot, that it goes for full and frank scrutiny. There's no corners cut. It goes, and if you want to call it in, we could.
It's to you. It is you can call it in as the.
I could call it in if we think that's necessary.
I think we had at the previous meetings and at the working group, which came out of the working group, there was an agreement that if we felt there was anything that had a number of concerns regarding our neighbourhood plan, then we agreed that we would call it in order that it got appropriate discussion. So I think if you'd be happy to do that.
I'm happy to call it.
Okay, right. So we've got a whole load of, have we got all the conditions?
Yep.
Right, wonderful. Okay, so I think I proposed that as, were you seconding that then, Councillor Jones, when you?
Whatever.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, potentially what we're saying is what we reckon, all the conditions.
All the conditions, yes.
Basically, and everything that we've said, which is green belt, 45-degree rule, highways conditions, and also the
Improved.
environment conditions in terms of solar panels and air pumps and whatever, yeah.
Okay, so essentially, we're proposing that. We've got a second there from one of you two gentlemen.
Yeah.
Okay, do we have a kind of show of hands if all in favour of that? Anyone against that? Any abstentions?
I'm not on the committee.
Pardon? You're not
Not
on the committee and, yeah, okay, right. Okay, so we've got an abstention from councillor Prouder and so councillor Rogers, not the committee. Right, moving on. I think that was our most contentious one of the day. On to SMD 2025-091. Mrs. Blakemore of 79 Lineside Road, Biddulph, Staffordshire. It's a single-storey rear extension, form a sitting room and study. There was no pre-application advice. The proposal is a single-storey rear extension to provide a study and a sitting room, windows and doors to the rear only, additional light from roof skylights. Principal access is through the existing back wall from the kitchen, additional access to the previously converted rear of the garage area. The remaining garage in the front of that will be retained. There's a significant spacing 380 millimetres from the south neighbour's garage and a larger 1060 millimetre spacing from the adjoining neighbour's boundary. The walls are facing brick to match the existing. The roof is a mono-pitched roof with concrete tiles to match existing. Windows and doors, white UPVC to match the existing. No design access statements, no supporting statements. It's not in the green belt. No BNG because it's a householder application. The only potential neighbourhood plan policies that apply are DES 1 and DES 2 again in terms of design and public realm car parking, and I think it complies. They're retaining the existing car parking, they're not putting any more bedrooms in, and the design, it's unobtrusive at the back of the property. I put any for Biddulph Valley Way because it backs onto the Biddulph Valley Way, I believe, councillor Yates.
Yes, it does.
But I don't think it's far enough away for it not to have any impact. There's been other properties along there with
It's
extensions.
pretty compatible with other extensions.
So I believed it complied with all of those. I was just going to send it through with no adverse comments. Yes, councillor.
Yeah, that's a picture I wanted.
Yeah.
Potentially you can see where the extension, how it all comes out. Now, it doesn't show whether there are any windows on the adjoining properties.
I think it did state that there are windows and doors are to the rear only on the plans.
Yeah, I mean, it basically is at the rear, but the problem is the distance it's coming out. If there are windows close to that fence, it's according to, again, this is again the 45-degree rule. Actually, it could affect it.
Are you talking about the neighbours' windows?
The neighbours' windows.
Right, okay.
That's basically that is the planning ground for refusal. Is the fact that if it comes out too far, and his windows are affected, i.e. in the terms of the angle that it comes out. So that is the only thing I would say needs to be.
Okay, so again, in that case, we're ambivalent about it, but subject to the complying with the 45-degree rule.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we can add that then as a 45-degree rule. Anyone else? Did anyone else want to have a hand up to make any comments? Okay, so essentially we're proposing it with no adverse comments, subject to complying with the 45-degree rule. Are you effectively seconding that by adding the 45-degree rule?
Yeah.
Yep.
Propose
So can I have a show of hands, please? Okay, anyone against? Any abstentions? Councillor Bradley again. Okay, right, thank you. So that's going through. Right, moving on. Supplementary applications of since the agenda was created. One arrived this morning, but we've deferred that to next month on account of the fact that it arrived within 3 hours of the meeting 3 or 4 hours of the meeting kicking off, as far as I was concerned. Therefore, moving on to 75 decision notices. So looking through them. 240436, we recommended approval. It was approved. 0578, we recommended approval. It was approved. No adverse comments for 250010, approved. And 13 Long Valley Road. Yes, I've got both of you two gentlemen, 3 of gentlemen. Right. Were you coming on an earlier comment?
No, it was on the Long Valley Road.
Okay, right.
That went to appeal and the appeal was
The appeal was dismissed, yes, okay. I was going to mention that, which was the next point I was going on to, but I've got Councillor Jones's hand up and Councillor Rogers with his hand up. Councillor Jones.
No, I was just surprised at the comment, the reason for refusal, on the side there. It basically, it's just like, it's saying, obviously it was supported by several residents, there were no objections from here. Whilst I've taken the party comment into account, these do not alter my findings above regarding the whole impact of development on the character and features of the town. It didn't appear to be a massive development to me. Really, few sleepers in making a parking area. I could see a patio on it.
I think irrespective, I think at the time we raised concerns regarding the sustainable drainage, but.
Drainage isn't mentioned on it.
Well, no.
Drainage can be put right.
Yeah.
You know, you haven't complied with, if you haven't complied with Sustrans, put Sustrans drainage right, can't use until it has need a certificate.
Either way, I think they were invoking the openness of the site, which was effectively invoking a neighbourhood plan policy, one of ours. But say it's gone to appeal, and it's been repealed.
Nice it got to appeal.
Yes, it has. It was discussed as
one of these
appeal
decisions to me.
Councillor Rogers, and then I'll come back to you, Councillor.
Yeah, it's a similar thing really, because the objections mainly were, I don't like it.
Yeah.
That wasn't a plain objection really. The neighbours don't like it.
I think
It wasn't the quality of the work or anything apart from the drainage.
it was the impact on the openness of the site and it being incongruous with the surrounding environment of the development in that area. That's the logic that's come forward. So beyond our.
It's worth noting as well, Chair, that lots of people do that sort of work, don't even put a planning application in.
Usually didn't.
Let's not.
I know this was retrospective, somebody.
It's not good. There.
No, you know, it is what it is, but I'm just saying, I'm a bit surprised, that's all.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
That's all.
just going to say, basically, there were quite a few objections on the grounds of the openness of the site was basically contravened, and that's what people who were living opposite were sort of saying. So on that basis, I mean, I'm surprised he hasn't mentioned that actually, you know, and there were quite a few people who sort of said, oh, we may have tidied it up a bit, because I think it was a bit of a mess beforehand.
Yeah.
But obviously, the planning rules are there, and if effectively it contravenes, then
I think it's unfortunate that it was a retrospective application that was put in. So presumably, having been refused twice, it will go to enforcement. Councillor.
Hey, Ross.
Yes.
I went past in the week and there's about 4 vehicles on that side now. One is a big motorhome. I think just going to end up with 4 vehicles on the pavement. And I think it's going to cause problems.
Again, I think that's certainly outside the remit of this committee, but as a consequence,
Yeah, I think it's
can you just make the point, as the one thing that does actually come out of this is actually the fact that how important it sometimes is to actually go to the planning department and talk to them before you actually do anything. Because if this is, you end up doing a load of work, spending a load of money, and effectively end up, he's got to put it back. So effectively it's going to cost him even more. Wherever he had gone in the first place, he might have been able to put together a scheme which was with
I think that's a very useful comment and advice for anyone watching this broadcast that might want to pick up on that for any future application. Right, okay, so I think we're done and dusted on that. Moving on to 76 appeals. There are no appeals, and therefore I will declare the meeting closed at 6:14 p.m. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for your attention. Thanks for those watching us.